Hi guys, this is Mo Volans, and in this course we're going to be taking a look at mixing EDM. And I use the term acronym EDM pretty loosely here because it's going to be electronic music in the box that we're looking at. We are going to be using a few external processes, but essentially mixing electronic music. So don't get too tied up with the genre, whether you're working with house, electro, drum and bass, dubstep, chill out, chill step, or, just electronica, whatever you're working in, don't worry too much about it because this course really focuses on getting the best out of your sound and out of your mix and not too much on specific genre. So we're going to be using projects from across the board, really. And I wanted to start right at the very beginning where you possibly would have been writing a track and you've come to the end of the writing process, the composition process, and you're ready to move on and take your mix to the next level. Now, at this stage, if you're anything like I am, and probably a load of musicians out there, your projects probably look something along the lines of this here. You've probably not gone and labeled a load of stuff. You've probably not coloured things. Things might not even be in the right order. You might have parts in there you're not going to use. This is where we've got to get a little bit more disciplined, move away from the crazy creative process of writing a track and get down to some administration. This can be good fun as well if you're, obsessive compulsive. But at the end of the day, it's sort of necessary to give yourself the best chance to get a good mix because it's all about workflow. Well, a lot of it's about workflow. And if you quickly need to locate a part to adjust it, you don't want to be trawling through endless, weirdly named files like this, for example, which is fine in a list. But once your parts are like that, it's very difficult to locate. I mean, you wouldn't know where to locate a specific effect here. Yeah, it's going to be pretty complex. This is actually something sent to me by a client that I've stripped the silence from to show you how complex things can get. But it is really a good example of what it's going to look like. So first thing we need to do is really sort of take stock of the project, work out what's going on. And whether you're mixing your own stuff, somebody else's stuff, it really makes no difference. It's, taking a basic overview of the whole thing is really what you want to do when you get going. So I'd work out what all the parts are. You can see I've started to put things in order. So, you can move things around and, we can use shift to select, large amounts of tracks, multiple tracks, and we can move them around. And I generally put drums first, bass, leads. So I'd probably start to move the leads around or the pads and put them after the bass, maybe, whatever you feel comfortable with. And the main message here is try and be ruthless. So especially if it's your own project, you really want to get rid of things you're not using. So if things are muted and you're just not going to use them, now's the time to delete them. Go through, check your parts, listen to things, and really decide on what you're going to use and what's working and what's not. Because there's no point in having things in there that you sort of think are okay, because this is going to make the mix more complex and it's going to make the project more complex. And if you've got instruments running, etc., you just want to keep things as simple as possible. So even in a complex project, try and strip things down. Save it as a new version. You can always go back. It's not a big deal. But once you've got your head around what's going on and what's playing when, then we can start to think about, some organization and a few little more administrative steps before we get into the actual mix. And that's what we're going to be looking at throughout this chapter. Things that you want to concentrate on, things like CPU usage and finding faults and labeling things correctly so that by the time we hit the mix and we get our processes in line, everything's firing on all cylinders and, we've got nothing to worry about as far as how the computer's running and how the project looks. So hopefully we get from something like this to something that's a bit more like this, okay? We've used the hide button. This is obviously just going to load up now in the background because that was my active project. But this is something that used to look like that actually, and then was, named. And I think that you can just clearly see that it's a lot easier to navigate. And when it comes to mixing it, it's just going to be a lot more simple. So we've hidden some tracks that we're not using. I think that everything's generally coloured, not necessarily in any particular order, but things, the drums are coloured differently to the bass, for example. And then at this point, we can even go ahead and move things around. So if we want to put the drums at the top, make a bit more sense of the project, just keep going until your organization is solid. But next up, we're going to just talk a little bit about, making sure that everything is firing correctly and play them back correctly before we move on to further organisational techniques.